While shedding tears, Clarice then said to Ed that they had no time for this. She solemnly said that she did not want to see him die again, therefore, they had to move quickly. When the disaster appeared, the Mex's bridge would be locked. She had done everything she could think of, whether it was dragging him away from this place, trying to escape like now, or hiding. She had done all that. Hearing that, Ed then tried to comfort her and calm her down. But Clarice couldn't calm down at the moment. Her emotions were peaking, which made her tell the contents of her heart that she had been suppressing. She had done everything in her power to fight for the slightest hope and chance, but nothing had worked, so you can imagine how desperate she was at the moment. She had made efforts again and again, but still, everything remained useless. Hearing that, Ed calmly said that it was fine. He then took out some kind of ointment from his pocket, and applied it to Clarice's injured wrist. Ed said that her actions were not meaningless. The fact that the wound on the body of a saintess like her did not heal indicated that there was something serious. However, the question is, why are all these wounds still there even though time has been turned back? The blessing of sacred law that envelopes her body protects her from any threat that aims to harm her. The blessing protects her body from any harm. The blessing of sacred law also provides full resistance to celestial magic. That's why Archbishop Verdio's mind-reading magic doesn't work on her. Then, why is it that only the saintess's memories and wounds don't reset? Actually, the answer is simple. It's because all these time loops phenomena are manifested through celestial magic. Clarice was stunned to hear that. Ed said that time was turned back using celestial magic. Clarice's eyes widened in surprise when she heard that deduction. She currently also realized, at that time, in the first timeline, it turned out that this was the thing that Ed Sr. realized. After a short pause, Ed then continued, a spell on this scale could only be fueled by celestial magic, grounded in divine power. After saying that deduction, with a small smile, Ed then asked her if she had realized the new path now. He was also a bit sorry for her for repeating it more times than he could count, but Ed was then shocked and confused when Clarice suddenly ran to hug him. With a tear-stained face, Clarice said that she didn't know either. At first she counted it, but after passing 10, she became difficult to remember. Hearing that, Ed then rubbed Clarice's head to calm her down. He said that she had struggled more than enough. He then asked her to rest for now, calm down so that she could focus more. She had pushed herself too much. Clarice was stunned to hear that. Those who hit their heads against a dead end repeatedly always crave for the same thing, a new direction. That was also what Clarice was experiencing at the moment. While looking at her, with a reassured face, Ed then told her to leave the rest to him, because they already knew the cause. They realized that running away was no longer an option. From now on, they would start hunting for the root of the problem. When Ed played this game in the past, in this episode, he also always felt something was wrong. Why Clarice's personality changed so drastically after Adele's death. She even earned a new nickname, the Saintess of Mistrust. The way she openly and aggressively opposed the church seemed very out of character. If he thought back, her behavior felt like the behavior of someone whose personality had been reshaped through countless experiences. Such details would never be known if only playing the game, but if Clarice went through this kind of hell again and again, and knew that the church was the mastermind behind it, then the birth of the Saintess of Mistrust would not seem strange anymore. It actually made sense. Thinking about that, Ed then realized that the scenario itself had never changed. It had always been like this. After that, Ed and Clarice then went to the Nail Hall, because they realized that they could not escape from the Saint Dragon, and if they escaped, then time would only be reset again, while to try to defeat it, it was simply not an option. Then, Ed then broke the door of one of the rooms and went inside. He asked Clarice to listen carefully. We will stop the resurrection of the Saint Dragon. We first need to track down the whereabouts of the Holy Emperor and Archbishop. Only they can use celestial magic on this scale. Hearing that, Clarice said that she had asked about their whereabouts around many times during the time loops, but no one knew. She felt that this was too strange, whereas usually people would always pay attention to important figure like them. Ed agreed. They do draw attention. Just as Ed and Clarice entered the room immediately fell silent when the students who were there saw Clarice and Ed walking so close that it made people wonder about their relationship. This was the room made for the joint combat training arena in Nail Hall, and coincidentally the current match was between Taylor and Wade. Taylor's attention was distracted when he saw the appearance of the two of them. He was surprised to see Ed knew the Saintess. In the original scenario, in the 5th chapter of Act 3, Taylor defeated Wade easily with his sword, but Taylor was immediately awakened from his reverie when Wade's wooden sword hit his head. Wade was very upset to see his eyes distracted while competing with him. While stroking his sore head, Taylor then pointed at Ed and Clarice and told him to look at them. Seeing the scene that was not the same as in the original scenario, Ed thought this might be another scenario twist, but he then immediately said to himself that he could not be distracted by such useless things. Because the Saint Dragon will soon resurrect, Ed then covered Clarice's head with his coat and moved again. His goal was not to watch Taylor's match. Ed realized that the most important thing now was to find the whereabouts of the Saint Emperor and Archbishop, who disappeared after crossing the Mexes Bridge, and the person who might know something was, she was a merchant who seemed to know everything inside the academy, Lortel Ketchum. Ed then immediately said to her that he wanted to buy intelligence from her. Seeing Ed approaching her, Lortel then smiled broadly and pretended to be surprised. This is a familiar face. She wondered if something profitable would come up. On the Arkan Island, all the information flowed through Lortel. While hugging his hand, Lortel then asked him what information he wanted, but, when Lortel saw Clarice who was beside Ed and also hugging his hand just like her, she was then surprised. Ed suddenly got a bad feeling at this time. If it concerns Lortel Ketchum, she was someone who could remain level-headed no matter what the situation was, but, that didn't seem to apply at the moment. With a sharp gaze, Lortel sarcastically asked him, "You have been endlessly learning new magic lately, are you now finally able to mastering hypnotic magic or something?" Ed just shut up at her words. Not stopping there, Lortel then criticized the Saintess for being too bold. Worried that Lortel would continue to babble, Ed then immediately told her that there was someone she had to find quickly. They had to track him down. Before the joint combat training ended, Ed also told her that he would pay with whatever she asked. Ed's words made Lortel finally realize the seriousness of the situation. She then said that she understood and invited him to discuss the details. After that, they then came to the carriage depot located near the Mexes Bridge. Lortel had ordered her subordinates there to collect all the reports regarding the sightings of the Holy Emperor and Archbishop near the Mexes Bridge. Her subordinates did not disappoint her and brought her all the reports she had requested shortly after. After that, Lortel then set her eyes on Ed and invited him to talk about the price. The price she set was usually very expensive, but today it might be even more expensive. She had to skip her last match and come with him because he said that this was an urgent matter, and she understood when he acted like this, usually, but, seeing Clarice who was crying in the carriage because she was about to part with Ed, Lortel irritably asked her why Jo was sticking to him like glue. She still didn't understand. Ed paid no attention to Lortel's words of complaint, his focus was elsewhere. Hearing that Lortel was waiting for her last match, Ed then realized something. It had been quite a while since they left. That meant that the joint combat training would soon end. Hearing that, Lortel felt the same way. Ed suddenly called Lortel and said that she was always calm, cool-headed, and brilliant in analyzing situations, no matter what. Lortel was certainly confused to hear Ed suddenly praised her like that. Ed said that certainly not without reason. He just felt that it was times like this that her ingenuity would really shine. Therefore, no matter what happened next, he asked her not to panic, and please believe what he said next. Lortel could only feel confused to hear his words. She then asked him, didn't he just say that they were running out of time? Ed confirmed it. It was exactly what he wanted to say. Right after that, the peaceful atmosphere in the academy was suddenly shattered when a mighty creature suddenly awakened and brought destruction to the entire academy. Lortel stood still when she saw the appearance of the creature. Her eyes widened as a result of the shock she received at this time, along with the awakening of the mighty creature. A very strong shock then appeared to hit the entire area in the academy and its surroundings. This caused panic among the students and others and made them no longer able to stand stably on the ground. But, that disaster was nothing compared to what happened next. When Velbrock launched its first dragon-scale attack into the academy, various corpses then fell as the students were unable to react and ended up being pierced by the dragon scales. Ed, who knew what would happen next, immediately cast defensive magic and protected himself and Lortel from the dragon scales. The shock in Lortel's heart could not be described by words when she saw the scene. She had never seen such a tragic scene before. At this time, she could also finally see the creature that was the cause of that disaster, with its enormous wingspan that looked like it could sweep away a city with each flap. The creature that was thought to only exist in mythology, the Saint Dragon, Velbrock, had been resurrected. A creature so powerful, just from its appearance alone, had brought such destruction to the academy. There were no intact buildings there, with students lying lifeless on every inch of the road. Lortel grimaced in pain from the shock caused by the Saint Dragon. but, when she opened her eyes, she was then shocked by what she saw. Seeing Ed's injured and bloodied body, Lortel then cried out in alarm, but, before she could express her worries further to him, Lortel was then silenced when Ed suddenly asked her, "So, how much is it?" Ed with a serious face asked her that question. Lortel was silent for a moment. Hearing that, although the current position of the two of them did feel a little ambiguous, but if you look at the current condition of the academy, it is not something that needs to be concerned. Lortel's current concern is also not there. The question that Ed asked her made her pause for a moment. With the rain pattering on her face, Lortel then smiled slightly. While taking out the document that her subordinate handed over to her and handed it to him, Lortel then replied, "Compared to the price of my life, you're getting a whole lot of change back." Hearing that, while accepting the document, Ed told her to just keep the change. Hearing that, Lortel jokingly said that this was a favorable deal for her. She then told the report that her subordinate gave her. Based on the 13 reports she received, the Holy Emperor and Archbishop used a concealment technique, then moved silently with the raiding party through a secluded alley. Hearing that, Ed then asked their purpose. Lortel replied, "Scholars' Cathedral in the Professor Building." Ed was silent for a moment hearing that. Meanwhile, in the carriage that Clarice was traveling in, the carriage tipped over due to the shock caused by the appearance of Velbrock. But, Clarice, who had the blessing of sacred law, was certainly fine. She then called Ed and tried to get out of the carriage by destroying it. After getting out of the carriage, Clarice then immediately ran to hug him. Clarice was very sad and worried to see him injured. She asked if he was okay. She was very worried to see his body covered in blood. Lortel, who was initially surprised and unhappy when she saw Clarice suddenly hugging Ed, then could only sigh helplessly when she saw her worry. She then stopped Clarice, who continued to grope Ed, and invited them to move immediately. They were running out of time, while carrying the horse that was still healthy and intact. Lortel said that the horse was still able to carry people, although the injury was indeed severe, but fortunately going to the professor's building was still possible. They had to hurry up. After that, Lortel was then about to get on the horse, but Ed suddenly asked her to give the reins of the horse. Lortel said, "Even with a horse saddle, one horse ridden by two people is still quite difficult, so one of them should stay here." Hearing that, Ed said that he and the Saintess should go there. Lortel was silent for a moment hearing that. Ed did not immediately explain the reason to her. It was a long story. He promised to explain it to her later, but, when Ed was dizzy how to convince Lortel, he was then surprised when he saw Lortel helping Clarice get on the horse. She told Clarice that they had to hurry. She was also sure Ed must have his own reasons for doing that. With a small smile, Lortel then handed over the reins of the horse, and said that she trusted him. Ed thanked her. He promised to repay this debt, but when Ed received the reins from Lortel's hand, Lortel suddenly pulled his hand strongly. While putting her foot on the stirrup beside the horse's saddle, Lortel suddenly kissed his lips. She said that he had paid his debt now. Clarice was very surprised when she saw the scene. Her face turned red because this was the first time she witnessed this kind of thing. But, when Clarice was confused about what to do, her eyes then widened in fear when she saw Lortel, who was staring intently at her. After breaking the kiss, Lortel said that, although she was not the main one, she also needed to secure her assurance too. Ed was speechless with her actions, but he did not scold her. He just sighed and called her name in a low tone. But, Ed and Clarice were then shocked when the horse they were riding suddenly moved and accelerated. Lortel waved her hand as she watched the departure of the two of them. She also said to Clarice, "Everything in life follows the laws of fair trade, you know. If you carelessly cling to something someone's already marked, things get real messy, you see." After saying that, Lortel continued to wave her hand, until finally she stopped when the figures of the two of them increasingly disappeared from her sight. Lortel was silent for a moment. She then turned around and walked past the corpses of the students lying unceremoniously on the streets. The scenery there was really not like the scenery in the academy that claimed to be the #1 academy. A gloomy atmosphere enveloped the place with destruction and death can be seen everywhere. After Lortel recalled, if she was not mistaken, the rampaging disaster caused by the Saint Dragon should have ended 300 years ago. As if realizing something, Lortel then told herself to smile, with a look that seemed hopeless. She then looked up, and muttered, "Because those who smile in times of crisis, in the end always become the winning party."